It is very important to understand something about Stacey Wondra, one of the 4 named suspects in the Michael Vaughan case. The thing about it is that Stacey Wondra, even though it's very easy to hate him, despise him, and understandably so, it's not going to change what's already been done if, in fact, he had something to do with Michael's disappearance. But it will matter, 100% matter, guilty or innocent, that he has a disability, multiple disabilities in fact, stemming from fetal alcohol syndrome. You would think that it's not common, when in fact it actually is and goes undiagnosed. And in this case, Stacey Wondra grew up in group homes due to the severity of his FASD. So I know that it's dramatic and awesome and cool to just hate train on a suspect of a missing child all day. However, why don't you just learn something? Learn what it means to Michael's justice. Take a listen.
60% of people with FASDs have issues, have trouble with the law at some point. Out of that group, 35% end up going to jail.
But let's just assume if someone with FASD is involved in the criminal justice legal system, the very nature of having FASD and the brain-based impairments do put them at greater risk of miscarriages of justice, especially when that person has no supports in place and the criminal justice legal professionals lack any awareness or insight into FASD. And Patty, you know this better than I do too. How many people have FASD who've never been diagnosed too? So
exactly,
we know that unfortunately a large percentage of folks with FASD do come into contact with the criminal justice and legal systems, but just want everyone to be aware. I'm not saying just for committing a crime. It could be for witnessing a crime. We know that vulnerability and victimization very high, unfortunately, among people who have been impacted by prenatal alcohol exposure. But
so the very ones that are hating on this person could actually have it and be undiagnosed. Interesting.
How many people with FASD who come into contact with the criminal justice system as perpetrators end up having a false confession type of situation going on? There's no statistics out there for that for FASD per se that I'm aware of, but it is talked about that there's stories out there in the media you can find. There's case law. It's talked about in some of the literature that it is a real issue.
It's a big issue because false confessions do happen with people who have FASD, and or the miscarriage of justice happens because the details are not accurate. It's a part of it. So you can sit here and say that I'm trying to make it okay for him to do or say what he does. What I am saying is one day the right people will be held accountable. But are you so sure this is it? Will the words of someone who is susceptible to do any and everything to get out of whatever stressful situation is going on in the moment, will it hold water? Suggestibility and confabulation plays a huge part in why people who have FASD tend to fill in gaps, like hearing something previously and saying it in the current, even though it's not true. For example, Adrian being in Boise and him saying Nampa, when we know it's in fact Nampa. So he did get it right once, but he also said Boise. So which one's going to be held against him? As creators, we have our own way of covering these cases. Michael Vaughan deserves thoroughness, justice, and not the kind that comes from hate.